Thank you all for joining us. I'm Jessie Genoway, FFI's Communications Director, and I'm so excited to be celebrating FFI's 20th anniversary with you all in this room and online. Thank you for joining us. And with no further ado, I hand it off to Dr. Reynaldo Martorell. You just have to advance the slides.
Hello and welcome. To those of you here in Atlanta and online via Zoom, thank you for joining us to celebrate FFI's 20th anniversary. Please note that this event is being recorded and live streamed on YouTube, so smile. I am, as Jessie said, Reynaldo Martorell. I'm a professor of nutrition here at the Rollins School of Public Health of Emory University. I also represent Emory as a member in the EMT Executive Management Team of FFI. And it gives me immense pleasure to be with you here today among the speakers that will share their experiences with FFI and fortification over the last 2 decades. Tonight, you'll hear from past and present friends of FFI, including staff, EMT members, and partners. Speakers represent public, private, and civic sectors, embodying FFI's core value of engaging multi-sector partnerships. Every sector must be included for sustained success. In some way or another, I have been involved with FFI since its founding in 2002. At that time, I was chair of the Department of Global Health, which is incredibly lucky to house FFI. To be honest, I don't exactly recall when I joined the EMT, but I do know that I have always supported FFI. I want to say a few words about the partnership between Emory and FFI. It's clearly a win-win relationship. What does FFI get? Well, it gets space, electricity, other services. You know, it's a house for FFI. More importantly, FFI gets access to our incredible students, our faculty, and the environment that Emory provides. On the other hand, the School of Public Health gains enormously because FFI provides training opportunities for students. And over the last 20 years, and Jessie, gave an account of those achievements, FFI has employed nearly 80 graduate students. Many of them are employed with subsidized salaries, where the School of Public Health pays for half their salary, and they don't make that much. I forget how much they make per hour. So they're cheap and highly effective and smart and industrious. There have been 25 students who have done their master's thesis on FFI material. FFI staff contribute to teaching. They have participated in at least 9 courses. 9 students have co-authored publications with FFI staff, and 8 have presented at conferences using FFI research. And Elena Pachon, who's there, deserves special recognition for orchestrating this major achievement. And I hope that this productive relationship endures for the next, 20, 50 years more. Recently, FFI named me, what is it called? FFI champion. and interviewed me. And I'd like to, just give a reflection of one of the questions that I was asked, about what does FFI, how does FFI feel for me as an organization? And I commented that in the nutrition community that I represent, there has been a history, a contentious history with industry. For example, colleagues that are working in breastfeeding, have a feud with the formula industry. People who work in obesity, the sugar sweetened beverages are an issue. So there's this relationship. But here in FFI, I feel very comfortable sitting, for example, with representatives from the milling industry, but also with UN agencies, international NGOs, US government agencies. FFI is a model of cooperation. And that to me is a very unique experience. And I asked myself, how did this happen? Well, because the mission is noble. We believe that what we're doing is for the common good, and there are no hidden agendas. So it's quite a remarkable experience being part of FFI. I'll now open the floor to our special guests, who will each have exactly 5 minutes, right, Jess? To reflect on their time working with FFI. First is FFI's founder and former director, and also former chair. I think at that time it was called Department of International Health, here at the School of Public Health, Dr. Glenn Maverly. Glenn came from Australia to be here with us, and I really appreciate, and FFI appreciates his coming. And personally, I feel indebted to Glenn because he recruited me to come to Emory. I was at Cornell at the time, and that's why I came to be here. Thank you, Glenn.
So, Ray, thank you for those kind words. And I normally ad lib, but I have 5 minutes. So I want to take you back to the UN event in 1990, the first World Summit for Children. Over 100 heads of state gathered to endorse 23 big ideas. Among them was the virtual elimination of iodine deficiency and the substantial reduction of vitamin A and iron deficiency in all countries in the next decade. The concept of overcoming hidden hunger through salt iodization, mass capsule distribution, more food and vitamin-rich food in the diet was put on the world stage. With the support of UNICEF, our small group team from Australia joined with US CDC, and the Program Against Micronutrient Malnutrition was formed. We held our first micronutrient malnutrition meeting around national strategies with ICC-IDD, Hopkins University, US CDC, and others in Stone Mountain. Progress was slow until James Grant, then head of UNICEF, was at a meeting in Peru to review progress with salt iodization and was sitting beside the largest salt producer. The producer said, "Thanks for the invite. For a while, I was wondering whose salt you were talking about." Oops. So the coin flipped, and within months, we joined Jim in New York with UNICEF representatives from every country in the world. And he picked up the yellow pages, the Google wasn't there then, and said, "Find the salt industry and make them your best friends." PAM initially, supported by UNICEF, were joined by USAID, World Bank, MI, Wageningen University, and we brought to Atlanta for a 12-week multidisciplinary teams from about 70 countries. They formed national plans and strategies to meet these goals. With senior UN officials, ministers from many of the countries joined in Atlanta to endorse the goals, and then cabinet-level meetings followed in over 30 countries. Success of accelerating the world's household salt from 5% to 80% was celebrated in The Hague in Salt 2000 with a massive gathering of the worldwide salt industry before being recognized at the UN. This is what I call stage one. For 2 years, I and some of the colleagues got to know wheat and flour industry from around the world, meeting with the CEO of the Australian Wheat Board, then Canadian Wheat, US Wheat, IOAM, Cargill, Beulah, Moulin Chemie, and the International Grains Council put us on the agenda. We joined the Middle East and African Millers meeting, and World Grain took notice of us and put us in their journals quite frequently. This led to 2002 inaugural FFI meeting following the Millers meeting in Mauritius, where we joined the wheat and milling industry to the UN and NGO community. We can call that stage two. We established a core team whose job it was to wake up every day to think about progressing FFI. The executive management team was formed and regional staff established with a budget around $1 million a year. We added maize to wheat, and the rice fortification group formed. I'll call that stage three. I learned today about progress in countries, so I'll leave others to tell the success of these decades. You might call them stage 4 and 5, if you like. Since COVID-19, we live in a changed world. There's been digital transformation, such as it's more comfortable meeting over Zoom, folks, than meeting face-to-face. Democracies are challenged with the emerging competition between the hegemonies of West and East, and grain is in short supply since the Ukraine war, and climate change floods that are ruining the harvest in Australia. When I tell this story to the average person, they simply do not know it. They don't know of the benefits and what needs to be done more. That's our task, so that when we talk to the taxi driver, he will know. FFI was never an organisation. It was always a very good idea, a public, private and civic partnership. We do need to stay together and make our presence felt in the metaverse. Congratulations to the current FFI team.
Good evening, colleagues, friends, former professors, former bosses. It's a great pleasure to be part of this fantastic celebration. And it's a great honor for me to be here 20 years later, which seems unbelievable. But I'm also very honored to be part of the executive management team when I used to prepare and plan for these EMT meetings many, many years ago. My name is Vilma Tyler. I'm a senior nutrition advisor with UNICEF based in New York, and I lead the nutrition of school-aged children, adolescents, and women. And in my portfolio, we work on large-scale food fortification as an intervention to address multiple micronutrient deficiencies, as well as overweight and obesity. And how did I end up at Emory? And I think it's really worth to say. I met Glenn and Jack and a few others in Jordan. They were having a meeting to talk about micronutrient deficiencies, and it was Global Alliance for Nutrition, kind of starting in its initial phases. And I sat next to Glenn, and I can't remember what was the discussion, but I said, I'm looking at going back to school after I had a kind of a long hiatus to just raise my son. And I said, I feel like I'm out of, the field and I need to come back. So he said, why don't you come to Emory? So I said, I'll think about it. Well, a year later, I came to Emory and I went to visit Glenn in his office, and he said, do you want to come and work for me? And I said, yeah, I guess so. So that's how it started. So it was in the beginning stages of the discussions about FFI. I didn't really understand it. It didn't really make sense to me, but I thought, well, it's a job. I'm just going to do it. But Glenn, what I really appreciated his passion, his commitment, and his strong belief in this mission. And I know that despite the many opposition, I have to say this because I sat in many meetings, the many doubts from different sides and different parties saying, no, this will not work. Why do we need to do this? But I remember, he had a vision and he was very committed. And the first meeting that was held, that was as part of the IOM, the International Association of Operative Millers in Morocco for the Middle East and Africa. And I remember Glenn wanted to have something big. So with our communications person, we developed these yellow stickers that look like a smiley face, and it says 70% by, this was 2002, so 70% by 2007. So we wanted to have 70% of the industrially milled flour fortified by 2007. It was very ambitious, but I remember we were all walking in Marrakesh with all these stickers all around us. And it was quite, impressive because people would stop us on the streets and ask us, what is this about? And it was really motivating, and it was really quite impressive, the industry buy-in into this. Now, many discussions in the hallway. I was sitting in the hallway. I remember it was in the old building. That was where my office, right outside Glen. And I used to get very annoyed because people were coming in and out. But then I overheard a lot of the discussions because I was still a student. I was not part of the core team or anything like that, but I was supporting. But I remember people would ask, what is it about? So why? Why this intervention? Because we know it's cost effective, okay? So what is it about? What are we doing? What are we fortifying? It's the industrially milled flour. We have to focus on the industrially milled flour. And by the way, at the time it was Flour Fortification Initiative. It was not Food Fortification Initiative, so it has evolved. How do we go about it? And I think both Glenn and Ray have talked about it. It's a public health issue. So obviously we expect ministries of health and governments to address it. But really, the private sector, the food industry were the key, because we cannot fortify flour. They're the ones who are going to do it. So it was really imperative that we work together with them to get to know them. And I remember Jack Bagriansky, when he used to come to do all these presentations, and he would say, he had these acronym, WIFM. It's like WIFM. So it's, what is it? What's in it for me? So we all had to think about it. What is it in it for the private sector who are out there to make money? Why they're not interested in public health? They're not interested in what we were talking about. But they saw the value of it, and they really, many of them bought into it. Now, mind you, as Glenn talked about, again, I work on overweight and obesity, and I always say not all the food sector is bad, because the food sector is the one who provide our food that we eat every day. So I think we need to really differentiate by the good and the bad, and not put them all in one pot. So we really, it's very much a public-private sector intervention. But also, while it is, it's a partnering with industry, we really need to be careful also, that the governments are very key in this. So, sometimes we go one way, we miss that the government has to really support the industry. The government has to have the policies in place so that it's a level playing field. So mandatory is really important to make sure that, everybody has the right opportunity. Civil society is really important, UN agencies, consumer advocates, but also I think what's very important is the academia. And I think here we see the support of the academia, because the research is really important to support the work that we do, because many governments would say, what does the research say? What is the latest evidence? So I think, so it's not one person, it's all of us here that represent different constituencies are really important. So, so I think, I did buy in. I had many frustrating days, but I remember, Glenn, when I left, finally graduated and I left, I still carried FFI in my heart. And, while, throughout my jobs with UNICEF, I moved around, while food fortification was not part of UNICEF's mandate. It was not something that we really felt that we needed to engage in. But with the new strategy that we have, large-scale food fortification is a key intervention. But also, I think what basically they brought me to New York and they said, we want you there because you know fortification inside and out, and we know that you'll be a strong advocate, and therefore you get the job. So thank you all.
Wonderful listening to all these great stories and the history of FFI. Unfortunately, I'm not going to add to this because my experience only goes back 1 year. My name is Mark Lodge. I'm the president of ADM's health and wellness business. And I have today the great pleasure of representing ADM. And I'm very happy to do this. And there are many things from a value perspective, from an approach perspective, that really, really nicely match with the work that is happening here at FFI. ADM, few words on ADM is are you okay? Okay, good. is a pillar of the global food supply system. ADM is one of the largest nutrition companies in the world, and ADM is an active innovator in transforming the bounty of nature into a clear commitment to improve the world. If we look into our purpose, it's very clearly articulated to unlock the power of nature to enrich the quality of life. So again, very nice fit on how we see things, how we approach this. And we not only do this since yesterday, ADM just celebrated its 120th anniversary. So that has been something that's been for more than a century in the center of our activities. With this, we are addressing through enduring global trends. And that's food security, that's health and well-being, and that is sustainability. And how important this is getting is becoming evident when we think about a few facts. Over 800 million people go to bed hungry every night. And the projection for the next years is that the population around the world is growing to roughly 10 billion by 2050. And the experts say in the 30 years to come, we need to produce more food than we have produced in the past 8,000 years. So there's a huge task ahead of us, and we need to do this sustainably, and we need to focus on a healthy nutrition as we move forward. So a big task ahead of us. Personally, I had the first-hand opportunity to experience the elementary challenges that we have around the world when I was supporting, in that case, a water sourcing project in rural Ethiopia a number of years ago. And I took a few things away from that. Number one, the most rewarding thing that we got from that time was the love of the people and the smile from the kids. That's still a source of energy for me today. The other thing that I picked up, and Wilma, we talked about that earlier, is while I thought I'm in the outback of Ethiopia and it's just the locals, I was surprised to see a number of organizations helping the locals. Actually, there were quite a number out there. And I thought, that's interesting. So there is quite a bit of support, but it seemed that it's not coordinated. That is happening out there. And the other thing that I learned is many of the initiatives I saw down there were not sustainable. So, and I think with the smile and of the kids reminding me of our responsibility, I think it is our responsibility to make a bigger, a more lasting impact on the people in need around the world. And I mentioned Africa, but it's also in front of our doorsteps. And I think to do this, the only way that can work is really bringing the public sector, the civic sector, and the private sector together to really build this. And this is something where IFF stands for. That's something that we 100% support and really believe into. We, as a company, and through our ADM Cares program, where we focus on hunger relief, education, and sustainable agriculture, are clearly committed to this. And ADM is very proud to partner with FFI to champion fortification so that people, and how could it be nicer than finishing with words from FFI, have people to provide them with the nutrition they need to be smarter, stronger, and healthier. Your work matters. Congratulations, FFI, sorry.
Hello, everybody. I'm so excited to be here. My name is Godfrey Oakley, and I am not a nutritionist. And so I realize I'm among people who speak a language I am not familiar with. But I ran into this group of nutritionists when at 5 o'clock on June the 24th, 1991, I got a call from Sir Nicholas Wall, who said that the randomized controlled trial that was being done to see if folic acid or another vitamin would prevent spina bifida was so positive it had been called off early. That telephone call completely changed my professional life. And I knew at that minute that all we needed to do to make spina bifida caused by not enough folic acid to go away was to fortify food. I'd spent a long time in the 80s trying to sell the idea of we getting money to do that study, because it would be so easy to make this disease go away. It would be like putting iodine in salt to make gordas go away and cretinism to go away. I fully expected that by a year from then, there would be no more folic acid preventable spina bifida. Boy, was I naive. Sort of the first major step was the MMWR article that was published, that was Public Health Service recommendation on September the 11th, 1992. And it said every woman who could get pregnant should consume 400 micrograms of folic acid a day. And there were 3 ways to do it. You could eat right, which is more or less a lie. You could take a supplement, which only works for about 20% of the people you're working on, or you could put it in food, which will do the job every time. And so we've been working on that ever since. 10 years later, I guess I'm over at Emory, and R.J. Berry had been saying to me, go see Glenn Maberly. He does something about micronutrients. Well, what the hell are micronutrients? I didn't have a clue what micronutrients were. But when I finally walked into his office, there was a list of all the impediments that you run into with a good idea as simple as putting iodine and salt. They were all the same things I just spent the last 10 years working with at CDC trying to figure out how to do this prevention that was so obvious to be done. And now 10 years after that, which was 20 years ago, 10 years ago now, Vijaya and I were involved in establishing a Center for Spina Bifida Prevention. So I've been the foghorn, the bully pulpit that's been saying, come on, guys, there's babies out there you can make normal, and we need to just get this done. And so we've made a lot of progress. And Glenn taught me many things from that meeting. One was the involved industry, which I didn't have a clue what he was talking about. And then I watched him do two important things, one of which was to hold a stone mounting meeting that I thought was totally wrong, because I don't like to go into meetings that I don't know what the answer is going to be. Okay. And there was such hostility in certain parts of the nutrition world that I didn't think there was a snowball's chance in hell that we'd get out of there with a decent recommendation about folic acid fortification. But in fact, we did. And since that time, the tenor, the background for fortification has changed. Having Vilma where she is, having certain people at other places, the atmosphere has changed, and we have an opportunity now to achieve this. I hope this gets done before I die. We don't have any more folic acid preventable spina bifida, and today we're about 25% of the way there. So I charge is to Scott, come on, guy, let's get the other 75% done. And what's so nice about it is that when you walk down the hall and talk to him or watch him and all the people that have worked with him, it's the most wonderful group of people to work with I've ever worked with before. I have never seen anybody who was backbiting or was wanting to do something other than get the job done. And we have perfect correlation. You get the mills fortified or the salt factories fortified, and I get to stand up and say, hey, we don't have any more folic acid preventable spina bifida. So ever on with this wonderful group of people.
All right, so now we're heading over to Dr. Omar Dari, who's on the line.
Hello, everyone. My name is Omar Dari, working in USAID in Washington, D.C. I'm the senior nutrition specialist in the Bureau for Global Health there. I have not been really working directly with FFI, but I have been interacting with the colleagues for a long time. Looking Glenn Meverly talking about PAM, I remember that it's more than 30 years ago, that beautiful program really moved the world in trying to reduce micronutrient deficiencies. This program created a lot of people in the low and middle income countries, and they are still there working until now. Some of them have passed away, some others continue. This type of program was not repeated. And that is so important to create human resources, because these are the ones who are going to make the change in their own countries. It's not the number of training that were done, the number of external advisors going to the countries, and the peoples in the country doing that. And I was one of them. I attended the micronutrient conference in Stone Mountain. That's when I met many of you there. I was also in the Ottawa meeting in 1995. And really all this energy in some moment 20 years ago was one of the reasons that created FFI. And FFI, I have been really working and interacting and discussing with many of you. Sometimes probably you have suffered some of my comments, like Godfrey Oakley, the same Glenn Meverly, Vilma Tyler, and others. But along the times, we have respect one to the others, and we have recognized that is because of the work that every one of us, that these things have changed. For me, the working in food fortification is very important, because that was my entrance to nutrition. The same as Dr. Oakley, I'm not a nutritionist, I'm a biochemist. And when I came back to my original country, Guatemala, I inherited this type of intervention from my antecessors. And that was really something like a miracle. I learned what is public health. I moved in this interesting, very useful and satisfactory field. I met many of very interesting and wonderful persons, like many of you in the room today. I visited many countries that I never imagined I will do, and interacting with cultures and everyone trying to improve the well-being of their societies. And this intervention is one of those that help us to do that. It's important also the interaction that I had with the private sector. As Vilma was saying, not all the private sector is mean. The private sector is part of the nations. And in addition that they wanted to profit, they are also part of the society. And what I have learned, that they also try to make their contribution. What is important is the private sector is efficient, is fast, is practical. And once they start and are convinced, the things continue. In many countries until now, these programs are working in spite of the lack of inspection by the government. But we don't have the documented data that shows us that. But I am certain that in many countries, they are still there. The government, despite the slowness and the limitations, is important too. They are the ones who are creating the legislation, regulation, and standards, the ones supposed to do the food control and inspection, and supposed to do also monitoring. We cannot neglect them. They are also important, and we need really to know how to work with them. And Vilma was also saying regarding the academia. The academia is important because it's the one who is going to tell us if the things are work or not and how to do the things in a better way. But we need to be careful sometimes with the academia because we in the academia are so complicated. We try to look for the perfect solutions and we don't see and have the common sense. Now, recently, food fortification has been attacked because we are using a lot of different vehicles for delivering the micronutrients. But the communities and the populations are going to continue doing and eating these foods, and we can still using those as a vehicles. We need also to work with the academia to them to learn the simplicity of the industry, because we are not trying to be perfect solutions, but the contributions could be very important. These small amounts of the micronutrients that are delivered through the fortified foods could make a big change in the populations and the epidemiology. Perhaps not for everyone, perhaps not from every country and every place, but the contribution is there, and that is where we need to recognize. In this opportunity, I also representing my colleague, Tim Quick, who was also awarded like one of the champions for the 20 years anniversary of FFI. Probably Tim Quick was not directly related to FFI, but he was really a champion, looking with the food industry, looking with reduction of micronutrient deficiencies. In the last year of Tim, he was suffering from ALS. And despite of that, he worked until 1 week before he passed away in July the 25th. And he left to us a lot of summaries, a lot of compilations, what large-scale food fortification is. And we are proud that he was a member of us in USAID. I really would like to congratulate FFI for these 20 years of success and hoping that we are going to have 20 years or more of linking the industry, the government, and the academia. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Dari. So now we'll have Jenny Williams. Sharing, sorry.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I'm Jenny Williams. I'm the team lead for the Neural Tube Defect Surveillance and Prevention Team in the National Center on Birth Defects and Developmental Disabilities. And I am also not a nutritionist, but I do get to carry the the proverbial torch that Godfrey and other greats like Dave Erickson and R.J. Berry and Joe Molinier ignited all those years ago, trying to prevent folic acid preventable neural tube defects. I'm incredibly honored to get to address the group today to speak about our relationship with FFI on their 20th anniversary. FFI has been a stalwart champion of micronutrient fortification around the world. And as a center whose hallmark primary prevention strategy for reducing devastating birth defects of the brain and the spine is folic acid fortification, we really share a common goal with FFI and NTD prevention. So my team, the neural tube defects surveillance and prevention team, we really are experts in birth defect surveillance and in folate metabolism and the impacts of fortification on folate levels at the population level. But, our expertise and knowledge is really focused on the impact of varying folate levels. And we don't have the in-house expertise per se on how to assess global fortification and influence the milling industry for fortification promotion. And this really is FFI's wheelhouse. So Scott, you and your team really have a keen understanding of not just industrial mills, but how to evaluate most promising staples for fortification and the feasibility of fortifying in a particular community. So FFI has really been our steadfast partner for years as we work towards the common goal of preventing those folic acid sensitive NTDs. I did want to highlight a prime example of how FFI really leverages the multiple governments, NGOs, and WHO to have a positive impact. And that's our longstanding work with FFI in India. So since 2013, we've partnered with FFI on the Haryana Fortification Demonstration Project in Haryana, India. And for those who weren't able to hear Parveen speak earlier this morning, the purpose of our project is to assess the feasibility, sustainability, and health impact of fortifying wheat flour with not only folic acid, but vitamin B12 and iron using India's existing open market and government systems in rural areas in the Ambala district in Haryana state. And over the years, FFI has stationed employees in India to help us coordinate activities for this project. And that project had 3 phases. We relied on FFI for their expertise and being the eyes and ears on the ground. And they worked really closely with partners like the Postgraduate Institute of Medical Education and Research. So that's an educational entity. They worked with the Haryana government, and they worked with both WHO CRO and WHO India on this project to ensure its success. We've now completed all 3 phases of the demonstration project, and we're working on analyzing that inline biomarker results, but our very preliminary analysis indicates that wheat flour fortification through the public distribution system is feasible, sustainable, and has significant health impact on women's health. We saw decreases, yes. We saw significant decreases in the prevalence of anemia, folate deficiency and insufficiency, and vitamin B12 deficiency and insufficiency among women who consumed fortified wheat flour through that public distribution system. And the last thing I wanted to say is, while FFI really has that global reach, I do want to emphasize that I do lean on FFI for their domestic influence as well. I want to highlight one of our most recent collaborations with FFI. So as many of you know, in 2016, the FDA authorized voluntary fortification of corn masa flour in the United States to address health disparities among the Hispanic population regarding higher rates of NTDs in that community. FFI is really leading the charge on helping us understand the voluntary fortification landscape of corn masa flour with producers and manufacturers, and not only for corn masa flour itself, but also those corn masa flour containing products. And this key information is going to be a cornerstone of our evaluation of the effectiveness of voluntary fortification in the United States. So Glenn, Scott, all the former and current FFI staff, I am incredibly thankful for the partnership over all of these years, and I want to congratulate you and celebrate you on this important milestone.
All right, you're getting close. It's just me and Scott. So here we go. I'm Ruth Peterson. I'm the Division Director for Nutrition, Physical Activity, and Obesity at CDC. And it is truly an honor to be here today. And CDC and DNPAO was at the table for the inception in 2002. And we have supported this work in many ways with the depth of the science work we have at CDC and the connections we have to other venues. But we can't do any of our work without the many puzzle pieces that have to come together for nutrition. So I don't wake up in the morning worrying about FFI because I know Scott is waking up in the morning and worrying about FFI, but it's an important part of global nutrition. And Rafa and his team support global nutrition in so many different ways. And I am truly honored that they are part of the division. We have many connections with the Global Nutrition Coordination Plan, the 1.0 and the 2.0 version, and many of the work that we do with DNPAO is resonating in those plans, but that global perspective is what we really take seriously and bring to the table here. I also want to point out the Global Malnutrition Prevention and Treatment Act in 2021. It's called 2021, but it was just signed in October of 2022. And I think that shows that the domestic focus on how important global nutrition is continues to be something that stays constant. Now, I wish I could tell you, oh, it's just gotten so much better recently and aren't we happy? Staying constant for me is a win. So we are not losing ground with administration. In fact, we had just had a national strategy that was released with the White House Conference on Hunger, Nutrition, and Health that actually had some of DNPAO's work in it. Now, again, it can't mention, heaven forbid, global nutrition to date, but it supports the science development that, and who just said it? Oh, Jennifer, I steal from the international work to fuel the domestic work. So Parmi's here. Parmi's done many things to help us with all our work at DNPAO and also in the global work. So it's great. It's a family. It's a partnership. It's a puzzle. And we're all in this together. And I have to say, personally, my growth with FFI has been off the charts. My training is in obstetrics and gynecology. And then I went into public health because I was going to fix everything with policies and systems change. And so when I came to CDC 6.5 years ago, and Rafa said, Ruth, you need to be the CDC liaison on the EMT for FFI. I said, what did you just say? And then Scott really helped. I remember in Vietnam, some of the great visits we had in Vietnam, and Scott explained things to me about milling that I would have never known as a person. And then I remember Rafa had to tell me that we'd gone on for maybe 6 hours in the meeting in Vietnam, and I was ready to go home, and it was 5 o'clock, and Rafa and I had something we needed to do. And I said, can we leave yet? And he goes, no, Ruth, you're facilitating the meeting. We stay until they leave. And all of that to say, FFI knows how hard this work is. You know, you have to meet people where they are. You have to be opportunistic, and then you need to back away when it's not working. And that is like the public health mantra in my head. And I heard that today in the meeting. I don't know if that country's ready. I don't know if they're ready, but this is what FFI does so well. You take data, you get passion, you get, as Ray, you said, you get people in the room who aren't going to yell at each other, who typically would be fighting, and you come up with the common good, and you're making the difference. And I am so grateful to meet the leaders of this work. I feel like the young one here, 6.5 years in. So thank you, FFI. Thank you for your incredible leadership, your passion, hitting those brick walls. And Scott, I've seen you hit some brick walls over the last 6.5 years, and you just get up and you keep going. So thank you for your leadership. And thank you to all of you who started this and keep it going. And thank you to Rafa for teaching me everything that I know about micronutrients. So thank you. Over to you, Scott.
Oh, okay.
Wow, this is pretty amazing. So I'm Scott Montgomery. I'm the director of FFI. I've been with FFI since 2010, prior to that with Cargill. And I got to go off script for a minute. So when did I meet Glenn Maberly? I was working for Cargill, and the CDC arranged a meeting with Cargill Public Affairs in Minneapolis. And Cargill was at that time particularly was a bit formal, suit and tie and all that fancy stuff. And so we're meeting in this auditorium, and I'm sitting next to Glenn, who I'd never met. And this is a true story. He's sitting next to me, right, paying bills. In the middle of this meeting, he's paying bills. I think, who the is this guy? Are you kidding me? Anyway, I got to know Glenn, and Velma brought up his office. My God, I wish for the 20-year we had a picture of Glenn's office. It was boxes and books and this terrible couch that sat in front of his desk, lumpy couch that was and it was in the School of Nursing at the time. But it just amazed me to see this passion. You know, at first I thought, who's this nutty professor? My God. But then I got to know Glenn, and he's an amazing individual, the passion he had for what he was doing. And Godfrey, another clear example of that, and many other of you. But you people have really made an impact on me. So with that, I want to start by thanking the speakers. It was incredible. It's a tough act to follow. For those of you online, those of you in Atlanta, thanks for joining us. While we gather, I'd like to take a moment to congratulate our champions. And I'm not going to read each one of these, I apologize. But Jesse did an incredible job putting together interviews and launching one a day. And I think it was just amazing campaign. So thank you to those champions. So the accomplishments made in food fortification over the past 20 years through FFI and global, they would not have been possible without the collective efforts of public, private, civic entities and partnerships. In that spirit, we wanted to honor these 20 individuals and organizations that have been champions for fortification. A handful of those champions called the 2022 FFI Fortification Champions. And again, you see the list. They were nominated by FFI staff. We also discussed it at our board meetings. And I think like anything like this, did we miss somebody? Of course we did. But I think these people on that list deserve that recognition. We did this 5 years ago and recognized 15 champions. So this kind of followed that theme. Finally, thanks again for your time. This concludes the formal program. We'll now move to dinner. The buffet is set up in the back of the room. We'll start with tables on your left to right going first. And the last thing I wanted to do is a huge round of applause for Jesse Genoway and Molly Hogstead, who did a lot of heavy lifting. Putting this program together, and trust me, I did not contribute much to it. So thanks everybody. Enjoy dinner. Hi, Walter.
Okay, Walter, I'm going to try to see if I can unmute you. I'm not sure if I know how to do that. Yeah. Okay. There we go. Okay. Oh, here we go. Okay, you can talk, Walter.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. Sorry for joining this call very late because I came back from Tanzania just 10 days ago with the infection. I had to go to the hospital and now I'm recovering. But first of all, congratulations also to the anniversary of the FFI and the whole team and also what they have achieved. And I apologize that I could not join the meeting, but I'm looking forward to meet you 2 times also next year. And I wish you a very good dinner and thanks a lot to everybody.
Thanks, Walter. We'll see you all. Thank you for joining.
Okay.